Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you have had previous incarnations. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be interested in this.
Dr. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Jim Tucker. And they both together have chronicled about 2,500 cases, very detailed cases of children between the ages of 2 and 5.
So the principle of reincarnation is that we are spiritual consciousness in a body to start with. We've come from our spiritual world. We've come into a body.
They went there and they found that yes, she did have a pet snake, and that yes, there was a sword hanging near the cot she was sleeping. Yes, there was safe here, and yes, she had a son who worked with hammer, and so she was from a blacksmith family, and she was born into a higher caste family.
And I've heard stories from mothers who've just been sitting there around 3 or 4 months, and they've seen this swirling light come down like this, and then come into their belly, and then they feel the body kick for the first time. Many blessings. Welcome to Spiritual Sense Podcast. Hello, Shireen. How's it going?
Hi, Michael. It's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you. Wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So I'm excited to jump into this fascinating topic about reincarnation. And are we just here once, or are we here multiple times? And we're going to ask you questions whether you're an old soul or a new soul, right? And what are the signs? What is reincarnation? How do you know if you've had reincarnation? And are there any evidences? Is there any proof of reincarnation? Is there anything that really we can look to see for sure that reincarnation is the real deal? And so many other things, right? This is a really deep topic. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you have had previous incarnations. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be interested in this. So, Shireen, tell us, what is a reincarnation?
Let's go with the word itself. So reincarnation is to come back in the flesh again. Like carne is flesh, and reincarnation is to come back in the flesh again. And so if you really want to, let's say, define reincarnation, put it in one sentence, it's about consciousness surviving the physical death of the body, and not only surviving physical death of the body, but taking a quantum leap and going into another body. So that, and going into another body when the baby's in the womb.
Right.
That is reincarnation.
So the principle of reincarnation is that we are spiritual consciousness in a body to start with. We've come from our spiritual world, we've come into a body, and here we are. And then when we physically die, we, instead of going back, we go into another body. We go into the womb.
Yeah, you could say that coming from the spiritual world into the body is incarnation.
Right.
We are incarnating, and when we say we are reincarnating, then we are going from one body to another body here. We're not coming from up above, but we are going this way.
Right. So incarnation happens once, and then once we leave, we go into the next one, and then the next one, and the next one.
Right.
And so here we are, and chances are, if someone is interested in this topic, it's very likely that they have had previous incarnations, because a lot of people aren't interested in this, and they don't believe in it, and they're not wanting to explore it. And even if there's evidence that they could look at, they don't want to look at it. This is a bit of one of those big topics where a lot of people just don't want to look at it. Isn't that right?
And the population growth in the world supports what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, let's say in the last 30 years, about more than 50-60% of the world population came down. Like in the last 100 years, more than 70% of the world population came down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you could say 70% of the souls, or even 80% of the souls on the planet have only been on the planet for 100 years. So they haven't had a chance to reincarnate. They've just come down. They have incarnated, but not reincarnated.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, isn't it? Because, you hear this term, you only have one life, make the most of it,
I know,
pack it all
yeah,
in, pack
yeah.
it all
You only
in.
live
You
once.
only
You
live
only
once.
live
You only
once.
live once. You might as well do this. You might as well drink this and whatever it is, right? You only live once. And it's true and
It's
not true at the same time, isn't it? Because most of these souls who say this actually will only live once and have only lived once.
Yes, yes. But also what happens is, yes, most of the souls will be only living once because 80% are have just incarnated. But what also happens is there's a materialistic worldview, right, which is actually going out of fashion, hopefully. Especially among scholars, it is going out of fashion, the materialistic worldview. The materialistic worldview is you only live once, so you need to do something, right? Like recently, I was standing in line at the airport trying to check my bags in, and this gentleman in front of me was trying to convince me I need to go skiing. And because I only live once, and I looked at him, and he kind of knew that I don't prescribe to that worldview that I only live once,
Right.
that I reincarnate. He said it, that, oh, you believe in reincarnation, don't you? But I was thinking, for people who want to sell something, right? If we want to sell going skiing or sell any product, then it's easy to sell. Like capitalism really works with this you only live once worldview.
Yeah, scarcity is one of the most powerful influence tactics. If you don't buy it now, in the next 20 minutes, you're going to lose out on this discount, and that's it, and it's
Right.
never again. So that principle of you've got a limited time, and then that's the end of it, is very powerful method to get people to do things.
Yeah, it really works for the profit.
Yeah,
The bottom line, it really works for the bottom line of many companies. So they are not about to propagate any other worldview.
yeah. If everyone said you have many many lives and you don't have to worry about anything, and it just goes on and on and on, and you've got plenty of time, people would say, oh, whatever. That's why in India, where reincarnation is widely believed, that people have a very different outlook on life, don't they?
Right. Right now, a lot of India, right? Like where I go often, my parents and all, they live in a very big city. So it's a global culture. And so global culture prevails.
But
Materialism
that's
and
true.
bottom line profit.
Yeah, no,
Everything
exactly.
that is the
Internet.
prevailing culture.
No, but it has been traditionally, like in the past, people were
Yes,
in a
in the
different
past.
different
Yes,
awareness around
yes,
it.
yes.
Yeah. So 80% of people have been here for 100 years or less, which is a big deal, and only 20% have really had many, many incarnations. Just if you look at the numbers, right? Since 1974, I think it is, the population has doubled, roughly, right? Roughly. So, in 1974, I think there was 4 billion, roughly around 4 billion, 4.3 or something like that. And now it's 8 billion, more than 8. So, most people, half the population, is under the age of 50 or 60, right? Isn't that fascinating if you think about it?
Right. That
So,
is fascinating.
so you've got 4 billion souls who've come down from the soul world, and they are new souls, right? And there's a difference between new souls and old souls. So then it's very interesting to know the difference, because old souls don't understand new souls, and new souls don't really understand old souls, right? Because it's almost like a different reality. Should we talk about that a little bit, the difference?
Yeah, one of the things though we need to understand is yes, there's a lot of distinction between new souls and old souls, and we could give some science and stuff, but you can never really tell anyone's life story, what happened in the past. You can never really tell, right? I mean, if I look at my life, right, or you look at your life, before we found the spiritual path, for all intents and purposes, we could have been new souls.
Well, we wouldn't know, would we? We didn't think about these things.
Yes, because first we didn't think about these things. I didn't think about all of the, many things. And also what was happening in my life. I could have been a new soul. Like you could have passed me off as a new soul.
Yeah, potentially.
Potentially, right? And so it's hard to tell. So, yes, Michael is going to share some signs, but they're only some signs that we think it's a possibility. But you never know with anyone. There's a possibility of anyone being an old soul, the possibility of anyone waking up to a time span which is not just one life.
That's true. No, there's no guaranteed science because there's idiosyncrasies in everything. But overall, when a soul comes down into their first life, they're pure and they're inspired and they have all this energy, this what we call satot pradhan, like the pure vibration. So they have their own version of a golden age, in a sense.
Right.
Like even if they're living in some village somewhere. So they'll feel happy, they'll feel relaxed, they'll be enjoying themselves, they'll be, they'll be content, they will be loving their life, basically. And they'll be inspired and they'll have a lot of energy. And gradually we lose energy. Whereas old souls typically have less energy because they've been around a long time. Like old souls will often feel tired, even if it's not physical tiredness, a sort of like, this is just too much, I just can't be dealing with this because it's been going on and on and on and on and on. New souls have just come down and they're like, ooh, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and oh my God, what are we going to do now? And that's why a lot of these people say, you've only got one life, you make the most of it. Let's go skiing. Woo.
Yes, let's go skiing and yes.
So when people are like, yeah, they normally are new souls. Not always, but that's more of like a sign of a new soul, is they have the energy and they have the inspiration and they want to get everything done and they want to pack it all in. Whereas old souls, the idea of having this like packed schedule back to back to back to back to back, which, like if someone says to me, would you like to have this schedule where, this time you do this, I'm like, no, I'm running for the hills, right? I want my space, I want my time, please, just give me some space. Because I've done everything and I'm like, oh, please. But new souls are, ooh, what's next, right? And they want to pack everything in. Old souls typically are more complicated. Old souls overthink things. Why did I do this? And should I have done this? And they're, all this extra thought. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? What about this? What about that? What about this? New souls don't normally do that. They just have an inspiration and they just get on with it. And they typically get fairly easy success in what they're doing. They just have the energy. There's not this resistance. Old souls want to do something and then they have confusion and resistance and they try and do it and they give up and try again and blah blah blah. New souls just go for it and they just go for it and then they get success. It's a very different energy.
Yes, but you know what? I feel like we are dissing old souls a little bit here.
What?
I know a lot of old souls who have really gone for it.
That's true. No, it's not that old souls can't do it. It's just that overall, as time goes on, the energy comes down.
I feel more than all of this, right? It's just the way you feel. Do you intuitively, right? No one told me, like even though I grew up in India, no one told me about reincarnation. People say, oh, Hinduism believes in reincarnation and all of that. But I went to a Catholic school. No one at home just really spoke about reincarnation. And so, but when I started my spiritual path, I intuitively believed in it. I just knew that that was true for me. And so you will intuitively know and believe in it, right? Whatever externally is going on, you will intuitively know and believe in it.
Yeah, it's more of a feeling. It's the old souls have more interest typically in philosophy and deeper things, and that they're wanting to understand the meaning of life and like why are we here and what's the point of it all, and these sort of existential questions are not old because they've been around such a long time. Like, what am I doing here and what is the point of life? And
right.
They're not
Not
satisfied.
Have compassion for others.
Yeah, more compassion, more awareness of the deeper aspects of life, and they're not satisfied with simplistic little things. They're more interested in the depth of things.
Right.
So there are many signs, we can go on and on, but I think you could get a sense of it. You can get a feel for it.
Right. I want to talk about when we are dealing with a subject like reincarnation, no? Because people might think, oh, it's all woo-woo, it doesn't matter really. But I really feel that there is a scientific process. And so even before we begin the scientific process, that we need to understand that the basis of the scientific process when you're looking at reincarnation is that consciousness is central to worldview. Whatever you're experiencing, consciousness is central to that. Your perception of the world is based on consciousness, not just physically is there and then consciousness just happens to be as a byproduct or just as evolution, it just came about. But consciousness is central to experience. And also many physicists believe in this now. Many physicists believe that consciousness is very central. And another very interesting aspect of reincarnation and science and reincarnation is that in University of Virginia, the Department of Perceptual Studies, there has been a lot of research on this. It was first Ian Stevenson who did it, and then Jim Tucker, Dr. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Jim Tucker. And they both together have chronicled about 2,500 cases, over 2,500 cases, very detailed cases of children between the ages of 2 and 5. And so there's a difference, right? Let's say it's not adults we're talking about. It's children between the ages of 2 and 5. And also, these children voluntarily spoke about memories of a previous life without prompt, right? They weren't prompted. Also, they weren't hypnotically regressed. So they would just spontaneously spoke about these things. And so they chronicled it. They chronicled what the children were saying, all of the different details of the past life and where they were and all of that. And they went back to these previous places where these children could have lived as adults, and then they chronicled a lot of these things and found amazing correlations. So, and actually, a couple of case studies which were very interesting for me was this young girl between 2 and 5, I think her name was Kumkum, and she spoke about living in a village 25 miles from where she was presently living. And she spoke about how, what her son was doing, that she had a grandson. Her son was working with a hammer, and she used to, that there was a sword here, and there was a safe in this particular spot with the money, and that she had a pet snake, and she used to feed the pet snake milk and all of those things, right? Like details like that. And they wrote down these details, and they went to this particular village because they said about the village, because she spoke about the village. She said, I used to live in this village. Between 2 and 5, right? One of the things we need to understand about children between 2 and 5 is they're really bad liars. And 2, they couldn't have researched this. Right, she couldn't have.
She
between
couldn't
2
have gone
and 5.
on Google and researched about
Research this,
about
right?
like snakes and the villages. And
right, that I have a pet snake and did this and that. So anyway, they went there. And they found that yes, she did have a pet snake, and that yes, there was a sword hanging near the cot she was sleeping. Yes, there was safe here, and yes, she had a son who worked with hammer. And so she was from a blacksmith family, and she was born into a higher caste family. And her present dad was not very keen on her going back to those memories or going and visiting and stuff, which is really good for the child, actually, because you don't want to confuse children about, you have enough problems in this life. Can you imagine having to deal with the problems of last life?
No. No, it's too complex. We'll get into that in a minute. Like we're glad that we don't remember our past lives. But there's another story similar to this where this kid, I think he must have been about 4. He started talking about his shop. He was always obsessed with his shop, right? And his parents were like, "You haven't got a shop, right? You're only 4. You haven't got, where's this shop?" And he's like, "No, my shop. I want to go to my shop. I want to go to my shop." And he started talking about his wife, and he obviously doesn't have a wife. And he started talking about the things that he did in his place and where his money is and all these things. So he finally told them where it was, right? Because he remembered the name. They took him to this place and he said, "Where is this?" And he was walking along. He showed them where the shop was in this village. And he said, "This is my shop." And he went in. He said, "This is my wife." And he knew the name of all the people, everyone around there. He knew all their names, right? And this is like a 4-year-old, never been there before. And then he went into the shop and he said, "This is where this is kept. This is where this is kept. This is where the money is kept, right at the back of this thing, underneath this thing, behind this thing is the money. And this is what so-and-so did." And he also had a scar on his head here. And the previous owner of the shop, who recently died, was shot in this exact same spot where the scar was, like a birthmark.
Right.
And I mean, how can you explain stuff like that, right? Never been there
Right.
before, didn't know anything
Yes.
about it.
There's a whole book that Dr. Ian Stevenson wrote about birthmarks based on, like, out
Yeah.
of his 2,500 case studies, right? That he found many cases where the violence that happened to the person usually reflects in a birthmark in the next life, like you were saying, like a scar
Yeah.
or something
Yeah,
like that.
birthmark,
There were
yeah.
many instances like this, yes. This other one, which is very famous, is about this young boy when he was 2. James Leinenberg or something. He used to have visions of dying in a plane crash. And he used to get up with nightmares of dying in a plane crash. And he would always say, "Plane on fire, James is stuck," or something. And he used to draw, and he used to write James 3. And so then they found out. That there was this world. This was 50 years after it happened. So they found out that there was a World War II pilot who died, and his name was James Jr. And this kid's name was also James.
That's funny.
And so he used to draw all of this thing that was going on, and he used to write James 3. And so, it can't be, right? It can't be especially this was in the US, it was in Dallas that this was happening, that these kinds of stories are so ridiculed in US that it can't be they're doing it for the money or the fraud, right?
No.
Like they're not getting anything out of this.
No.
Nothing
Exactly.
out of this. It's just the child is having nightmares, and then they had to go to a parapsychologist, and the psychologist said, "You're safe," to tell the child, "You're safe now, don't worry about it, you're safe now, it's in the past, you're safe now." So he eventually got over it, but if someone is having nightmares and you are trying to push it under the carpet or trying to deny it happened, I don't think it's useful. And also, the main thing here is that the parents or the boy, of course, couldn't have gone and researched all of this. It was 1998. They couldn't have researched all of this. The boy couldn't have researched all of this, is the parents are really not getting anything out of it.
No, they're just confused and concerned about their child and trying to figure out
Right.
why they're having these experiences. And, it's understandable that in the US it'll be ridiculed because about 80% of people here, at least 80%, are new souls in America, right? So when pretty much everyone, it could be 90%, we don't know the exact numbers, but most people in America come straight down, and that's why US culture is like it is, because they're, "Yay, let's get on with things and create things and do everything quickly and get on with it, because this is it," right? So, and they've done a lot of amazing things actually, but they haven't had reincarnation, so they don't believe in it because it's never happened to them. And
Right. Right.
that's just how. But in India, there are more older souls, and so
Right.
there's more cases over there,
Right.
and other
Right. Right.
countries.
Yeah, like Middle East and
Yeah.
stuff, there are more cases of that. You know, one of the things is it's important to note here is that we in the Brahma Kumaris really believe that the soul is eternal, that it's never born and it never dies. We will always exist. We are beyond time. We are beyond all of the material constructs, right? When we come into the body, then we come into the material world and we are subjected to the material constraints. But otherwise, the soul is eternal. And because the soul is eternal, once the body finishes, which is popularly known as death, the soul can just go on into another body. And so that is why, because the soul is eternal. So we are either in the soul world, just hanging out, waiting for our first birth or second birth, depending on when we have come into the world in the last few hundred years, or we could have been here for a long time because civilization has been going on for a while here in on this planet. And so, and the other very important thing to understand about reincarnation is that within the Brahmakumaris, we do not believe in transmigration like the Buddhists do, or some other religions do. Some religions believe that you can go as a cat or a dog or a frog or an insect or all of those things. But in our understanding of spiritual concepts, a human soul will always go into a human body. It's not restricted by gender, it's not restricted by race or color. Like if I leave the body, I can go into Japan in a male body. It's not restricted, but it's definitely a human soul will go into a human body. Just like, because the soul is like the seed, right? So if you plant a mango seed, what will you get? You will get a mango tree. You're not about to get a grape tree. The tree will grow up and it'll give you mangoes. If you plant an apple tree, the tree will grow up and give you apples. It's the same way with the human soul. The human soul is like the seed. It goes from one human body to another human body to another human body.
Yeah, because there's a different level of experience and intelligence in human beings, because we have a totally different reality than think about a human being compared to an ant. I mean, like this totally different consciousness.
I know, right? Totally.
Or a
yes.
cockroach, or I think people have used this to try and scare people.
I'm so glad I will not come as a cockroach. That sounds so
A
scary.
mosquito, you become a mosquito, and someone's and it comes after you and a fly or something. I remember when I was younger and I was at school, and I remember rushing to school in the morning and wondering. Seeing this cat, right? I saw that my cat was just just relaxing in the sun, sitting on, and I thought I'd much rather be a cat,
Right.
But I realised no, I'm not going to be a cat. But the thing is, like, cats could become like the little kitty cats. They could become a lion, or they could become a leopard, or they could, because they can go between, because they're the same species, right? So your little cat at home might have been a tiger in its last life, potentially, right?
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Oh no, because there's
We're
the same
not sure
species.
though, right?
I'm pretty
same
no, I've
species?
thought about it's the same. They're all species. They're all cats. So there's not enough of. You can tell when you see the cats, because I've had cats, right? You look at them. Their sanskaras are very similar. They act almost the same. They're just the scale is different. Like there are big people and small people. There are some people who are very muscular, and some people who are very kind of small and like frail, right? So the cats, they're a different scale, isn't it? Like a bear, you can have a small bear.
I will reserve my judgment on that.
A small bear and a
I'm
big bear.
not sure.
Yeah, small
Not
bears
sure.
and big bears, right? They're all.
Not sure.
Yeah, well, that's my personal opinion. I thought about this, that cats, Cats could be big cats or small cats, because when you look at their behavior, under the circumstances, they can act very, very similar, right? They catch things and they sit around and they're territorial. It's very similar. They're just scale. But people, just like people, right? You can have someone who's living in a little life in a little shack somewhere, and you can have someone else who's living a very like extravagant life with massive parties and loads of money, and it's all the same conscious, the same soul, human being, isn't it?
So the question really is that we should ask ourselves, right? Is if we are going to reincarnate, which is a different worldview from you only live once worldview. So if you're going to reincarnate, the implications are very different. We can talk about the implications in a little bit. But if you are going to reincarnate, so from one life to the next life, what is it that you have to do in this life to have a good next life? Because that is the most important question you have to ask, right? So this life is not, whatever you do in this life is not just for this life, but it's a continuation. There's a continuum. Whatever you do in this life is you get benefit in this life, but also you get benefit in your next life. And that is what is karma. Like if you do good actions, you want to do divine service for people, you want to help people, you're compassionate, so you will be born in circumstances where you can help people, right? Because those are your sanskaras, because you want to help people. And so if you have this worldview of reincarnation, then the way you live your life, the consequences of your actions take on a very different meaning.
Right, you don't think you can just screw everyone over and just get whatever you want and there's no result to it. So that's why people who think, oh, so-and-so did some bad thing and they got away with it, they're not going to get away with it really. No one can get away with anything, actually.
In karma, no one gets away with it. Karma is absolute and universal. No one gets away with anything.
No.
And so, apparently in the US, 2/3 of murders are not convicted.
Really? That's a
right. 2/3 of the people, 2/3.
Wow.
So only 1/3 of the people get caught. Of all the murders that get done, only 1/3 of the people get caught. And so you might think, oh my God, the 2/3 of the people are just getting away with it. But they don't really get away with it. No one just gets away with it. Right. Because karma is an unseen force that exists. Whether you believe it or not, it exists. And then there are consequences to this.
Yeah, even in this life, I'm sure if someone murders someone, they're going to have sleepless nights and panic attacks and worry about getting caught, and like their whole life will be like guilt-ridden, probably, a lot of them.
That's absolutely true. And when I see some of these Hollywood movies romanticizing assassins and hire for kill people and stuff,
Right.
and I'm thinking, are you serious? They must have a horrible life. How are you romanticizing this? Like even if you hurt someone, right? Like just a normal person, even if you hurt someone, let's say you decided you're going to chop someone's leg off. Forget about killing, just chop someone's leg off. You're going to have nightmares for years and years and years that you're trying to chop someone's leg off. Can you imagine the nightmares you're going to have that you killed one person?
Yeah. And
forget about...
Yeah, and even if they chop their leg off, they might be born with like a leg defect or something in their next life,
No, right. Just I'm talking about if you as a person try to chop someone's leg off, and then how you will have nightmares around this.
Oh, absolutely.
And how people just romanticize this. Oh, they're hired for kill people and stuff, and they do all of these hire for kill, and then they come home and have a normal life. That's not reality.
No. So we can't get away with anything, and there's no point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So reincarnation, when we understand it, then we want to think, of course, what are we doing now to make our life better? But also, how does that affect the future? So we take rebirth, we take reincarnation, we get reborn, we get a new life based upon our past karma and our sanskaras. Our sanskaras means our tendencies, our habits, our way of thinking, our way of being. And so you leave the body, you go into the womb of the mother, roughly somewhere between 3 and 4 months, right? Because up until 3 and 4 months, there's not the place for the soul to sit in the brain, right? So you can't go in the body until the body's ready to receive the soul. And I've heard stories from mothers who've just been sitting there around 3 or 4 months, and they've seen this swirling light come down like this, and then come into their belly, and then they feel the body kick for the first time after that. I've heard this from many mothers, actually. Some version of this, they can feel it arriving. And so before then, it is just, not exactly a clump of cells, but sort of like that. But then it becomes this actual living being who's alive in the body, soul and body together, like a little mini person. And then that baby grows and grows and grows. And then why does that soul end up in that particular mother's womb rather than someone else? That's because of their sanskaras, that's because of their karma. That so why do some people get born into these very wealthy families or royalty, which is quite rare, and others different places? Why is their health of some babies good and some babies not? These are all complicated things. And in that period, when you get reincarnated, that 6-month period, where, if you think about it, right, can you imagine being locked in a cupboard, not able to move in the dark for 6 months? Right? I can't think of anything worse than that, actually.
It does sound claustrophobic, doesn't it?
You're stuck in a cupboard, like curled up in a little fetus position, right, for 6 months.
Literally. Fetus position.
And you can't do anything for 6 months. You can't go out for a walk, you can't listen to the music that you like, you can't get the food you like, you can't have the tea that you like, you can't watch that, you can't do anything, right? You're just stuck in this thing in the dark for 6 months. So that period of time, depending on the state of the soul, can be very unpleasant, right? So if we're very relaxed and very pure and we have a high consciousness, we can just relax and just kind of sleep and it's all good. But if we've done a bunch of bad things, then we're going to be processing all that stuff because we're still alive and in this weird place for 6 months, right? So I'm sure
huge. It does sound like a not a very good time. If you've done bad things, it doesn't sound like a good time.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, you could say, karmic settlement happens during that time.
Right. Or like a punishment.
Punishment, yeah. Because you're stuck in the womb. But then I think this is partly why babies come out and they're like, wow, because you can imagine if any of us was stuck in a room for 6 months, right, solitary confinement, right, and then we were let out, we would be like, oh my God, the sun, we'd be like babies ourselves, wouldn't we? Can you imagine? We'd be like, oh, it's so amazing, right? So the babies have actually...
On the other side, though, on the other part of it, if you've had a good life, if you've led a good life, where you really compassionate, service to others, weren't selfish, got on with your spiritual life, all of these things, right? The 6 months will be not bad.
It might be even
just
be fun.
6 months.
Yeah,
it's just 6 months. It's not going to be bad. It's just 6 months. And the downtime is just 6 months.
Right.
So we don't need to fear death because downtime is only 6 months.
Yeah, and if we're content, we enjoy it. It's like...
Right. But also there's no fear.
Yeah.
There's no fear in this worldview, right? There's no fear. So in this worldview of reincarnation that we are talking about, these are the implications of reincarnation. This worldview, which is totally different from the worldview of you only live once. This worldview, there's a lot of freedom because time is expansive. You're an eternal soul and you have multiple lives. To learn, to experience, to evolve, you have multiple lives, right? Whether we evolve or not is a different matter, but to experience, you have multiple lives. And then 2 is the downtime is only 6 months. So there's no fear of death because the downtime is only 6 months. And if your karmas have been good in your past life, if your karmas have been good, in this life, you will have a good life.
Yeah, in the next life. And in,
Yes. Yeah, in the next life, you'll have a good life. In the
Yeah.
next life, you'll have a good life. And so, and it could even be fun, right? Let's say you're not able to do certain things in this life. In the next life, you'll be able to do them. You'll be a young child and you'll be able to run around and do those things. And so it's not to fear death.
Yeah, exactly. There's no end. There's no end. It's just like it's like a new chapter, a whole new. It's a new life, literally a new life. You're starting from scratch, and if we have good parents, then they love us, and it's very nice to be with them. And if someone has good karma, then the mother is going to be one of those mothers who's very concerned about making sure she eats everything right and gives love and blessings to the baby in her womb, and is just like, I'm not going to do extra stressful things because I need to make sure that I'm in the right place for the baby, and all these sorts of things. Whereas if someone has bad karma, then the mother's going to be drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and maybe doing crack, and there are these crack babies who come out addicted to crack, and it's so we don't obviously want that. Because you can imagine, right? Someone's they're in the womb, and now they're getting crack, right? I mean, what could be worse? So this is very, very significant, and there's only a matter of time before we all die, isn't it? Really,
right.
Physically,
it's very certain.
Yeah.
I used to think before death and taxes, but now taxes are very questionable, especially if you're wealthy and you're, you know who I'm talking about. You can get away with not paying taxes, but definitely death, no one's going to escape. Everyone has to die. People talk, I used to have a friend who used to constantly talk about these, the Bilderberg Group and this and that. And I used to be like, whatever it is, everyone has to die. Like, let's get that straight. Everyone has to die. And so whatever you're doing in this life, if you're mindful of it, then you're really setting up something for your future. Otherwise, you're just disregarding your future. You're just disregarding your present actions are totally disregarding your future.
Absolutely. And it's quite possible we have a life review in the womb as well, to some degree.
Absolutely,
right? And life review is where you see your whole life, past life, whatever you did. And then not only how did you feel about it, but how did the things that you did affect other people, and how did they feel? And so, I mean, I think it would be better to have a life review every week, really, because then you get it over, rather than once in life. But
right.
But still, everything we do is having an effect on our future for now, but also our future and our future.
Right. It's not just in this life, but if the things we do could go past this life, right?
Right.
Because one very important thing that we need to understand is this intersection between science and spirituality is there a difference between mind and brain? Are both the same, or is there a difference, right? In spirituality, we say the mind is different and the brain is different. Anything physical, like the brain is physical, you can actually measure the brain, you can see the brain, you can, MRI the brain, you can do all of those things, right? That's a physical thing. And so that's the engine of this body. And the mind is part of the soul. And that is spiritual. That you cannot MRI the mind. It's a spiritual thing that you possess, but it's spiritual. And so the mind and the brain are distinct and different. And if we understand this distinction, if we understand that there is a soul and the soul has a mind, the soul has sanskaras or impressions, the soul has a buddhi or intellect, and then the soul has a and the soul has a body, and the body has a brain. And so when we have these very important distinctions and we remember we are eternal souls with all of these things, and then the body has a brain, then it's not just if we understand the brain, then we understand everything about life, because that's what some science people think, that if you understand the brain, you understand everything about life. That's not true. You have to understand the soul.
Yeah, the mind is in the soul. The memories are in the soul, not in the brain.
Right.
And so you take the memories potentially with you. Otherwise, because if someone's reincarnated and then they can remember their past lives, obviously their brain from the last one is not there anymore. They burn the body. There's nothing but ashes. So where is the brain? Right? Nothing there. So obviously the memories are in the soul. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to remember the past.
Absolutely. One important thing we should mention here is that we don't recommend hypnotic regression, because to regress yourself and see what happened in your past life or the life before, that is really not recommended, because we have a hard enough time dealing with the traumas of this life.
Yeah.
Why do we go back into the past? That we really want to move forward. That the reason why we are actually even talking about reincarnation is to understand that whatever you do in the present affects your future, not just in this life, but past this life, right? And to invest in your future properly, just like you would invest in your 401k and things like that, that you invest in your future properly. It's not about going back, but it's about moving forward.
That's right, and the reality is, because I actually studied hypnotic regression. Like I studied a course on hypnosis, and they talked about this and how do you do it, and I know how to do it. And what they found is that a large percentage of the people who do it are either Cleopatra or Napoleon, right? So how can you have hundreds of Napoleons and Cleopatras realistically, right? Joan of Arc or Genghis Khan or whatever, right? So it can't be. So you wouldn't want to be Genghis Khan.
That Khan guy was not a cool guy.
No, you wouldn't want to be Genghis Khan. But how can there be 150 Napoleons realistically, or Queen Victoria or whatever? Everyone somehow is some kings and queens or, famous people. But realistically, most people are not going to be the queen. So if you do hypnotic regression and you find out that you're the Queen of Spain or something,
probably not
right?
True.
But even if you
but
were,
also that could
matter.
be your desire, right?
Could be a desire.
I do not have a desire to be European royalty at all. They did not have a good life. It was not as romantic as they make it out to be now.
No.
And they did not bathe every day.
Yeah, they bathed once a month.
That's absolutely not a go for me. In all my lives, I bathed every day.
That's right. It's India has been lots of bathing, at least once or twice a day, and but yeah, it's funny, these countries. Some places they didn't bathe at all, but that wasn't the thing. Maybe once a year had a quick bath. Can you imagine? So past life regression is not helpful, because we, first of all, probably are not going to get the right answers because of our biases, right, and our fantasies. And even if we do, why do we need to know what's messed us up? This is another topic, right? Because I know a lot of people who've done these things and they have therapy and all these things, and they're going on and on trying to figure out what the root cause of all their problems is. Even if they find out, 15 lives ago I was murdered by so-and-so and blah, 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 blah. What does that do for you now?
I know, right?
How is that making your life today better? That this person who comes to deliver the post actually killed you 15 lives ago. Like, why is that useful to know that your postman was a murderer? But this is a fascinating topic.
And how can you be sure?
Exactly. You might be projecting.
That is not definitely permissible in a court of law, I'm guessing.
Exactly. He murdered me 15 lives ago. Yeah, but he's just delivering your post now, But every time he comes on, I get freaked out. It might be because of that, but it might be because of something else. So what we want to do with spirituality is think, how can I resolve my internal things now It is useful, though, to be honest, to understand that our past habits didn't just appear out of nowhere in this life. Some of the difficult stuff that we have to work through, that we're having a hard time with, it's not because we're bad people and we're having all these issues. It is because of previous lives doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and again and again and again and again. So some of these stubborn issues that we deal with, we can have a little bit of compassion for ourselves and for other people, knowing that this goes back a long, 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 long way, and it's not just going to disappear with a couple of affirmations.
Absolutely. That's such a pet topic of mine. When people say, "Oh, we can just wish away the darkness," I'm like, really? You can't just imagine your darkness away, right?
No.
You have to do so many other spiritual things, like, get to work on shining a light on your fears and why they're there, and really doing good karma. Good karma is very important. Karma is very important.
Yeah. So we can say, the reason I'm messed up, if you like, or have these issues is because of previous karma that I don't remember and I don't need to remember. And even if I did remember, it would probably just add complication to things. But what can I do about it now to change it? That's the big question. What can I do about it to make a difference? How can I reprogram things and change my life today? And also reincarnation explains why you might have more of a connection with some people than other people, right? When you meet someone and you kind of get along with them really well and you feel like you've known them a long time, you probably have known them in the past. You might not have, but often the times you have.
Right.
Because these are your people, and we typically meet a lot of people again and again as well, chances are, right? So you're probably around some of the people who you've known before right now, and other.
I don't want to really know, actually.
Yeah, and others you aren't.
Because I don't want to have to deal with if they wronged me and then the waste thoughts that come from that. I don't want to know.
It adds complication, so it could be.
Yeah, or I did something to them which is worse.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
No, but it's enough to know that there's a fairly strong possibility that people you know now, you've known before, especially if you have a strong connection with them. If you're around somebody and you have this weird karmic issue with them, it's quite likely it goes back in the past. Because some people, you meet them and there's like a neutral, they don't have any effect on you whatsoever. It's just totally like water off the duck's back. It's nothing. And other people, this is like, argh. And that's most likely karma.
Right. That was fabulous.
Yay. Well, this is a huge topic. We could talk about this for many hours, but we will call it, this is round 1 on reincarnation. And thank you, Shireen, for your insights.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being here. Should we do a blessing?
Oh, of course, of course.
Okay, give me a minute. Okay, blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pick a random number, a random page. And this is for all of us for today to contemplate reincarnation. The blessing is impartiality. You view everyone with a vision of fairness and respect. Your loving attitude shines from within, aligning with the timeless truths that guide your life. You've gracefully stayed true to your core values, living in harmony with your true self.
That's beautiful, beautiful connection to this topic today.
So all our lives, we've gracefully stayed true to our core values.
Let's hope so.
I'd like to think that.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Right, but I'm sure I was not the best person in some lives.
If you've had a lot of lives, there's been a lot of situational ethics, I'm sure.
Right. Right.
Oh dear, oh dear. So thank you everyone for your wonderful presence, and talk to you soon. And by the way, if you love the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. And if you'd love a free course, you can get it in the description below on the ancient spiritual secrets. Yay, take care, much love.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.